Green, red, blue, yellow. So that's a little bit about worms, but the reason why I'm studying worms isn't just because worms are cool, we know they are, but I'm studying worms because I had the question, I'm trying to figure out the answer to this question, how can we tell when it's a humid day or when it's a dry day? So have you all learned about your senses?
Yes. 5 senses. Oh, you know? Yeah, we
heard 5 senses,
you
right?
touch.
Okay.
You know, you touch, you see, and you taste.
Okay, you gave all the answers right away. We're gonna just go through it real quick here. So so one of our senses here, we can hear.
Yes.
There's one here. We can smell. We can smell. There is an eyeball. We can see. Y'all are way ahead of me. We can touch. And then, it's hard to see, this is a tongue. What do we do with our tongue? Taste. So we have 5 senses.
Good job, guys.
That's great. So what do you think? Which sense do we use to sense when it's a humid day or when it's a dry day? How do we sense moisture? So do you think we hear it? Do we hear when it's we don't? All right. We don't hear it. Do we see it? Can we see when it's a humid day?
No. Yeah.
I think that in some cases we might be able to see it, and that's it when it's foggy, but it's not really seeing the humidity. We're seeing the fog. So I wouldn't say we really see the humidity. But we can notice, you notice some days that are humid where maybe your hair is like more stringy, or if you have poofy hair that it's more droopy. Y'all probably don't worry about that yet. All right. Okay. How about smelling?
No.
Sometimes that's a good answer. I was wondering, like we were talking about, that when there's a storm coming, can you sometimes feel like you might be able to smell something?
But
I don't think that's the humidity, but if yeah, so you have a sense. So if you're always right, you're sensing it, and so it is a sense, one of those 5 senses. We just have to figure out which one it is. Do we taste humidity? No, we don't. The worms don't taste humidity either. We tested them. We tested worms that weren't able to taste, and they still could sense humidity. So, one other thing we're going to talk about before we make another break for an activity is, you all like to play with toys, right?
Yeah.
And you can actually, you can learn from your toys. You ever feel like you look?
I learned from my mother at Chicago because they give me a story.
So scientists also learn from toys, and I'm going to explain what I mean. So think about it like this. Here's a real car, and every part that's taken out. There's 20,000 pieces in this car, so it's very complicated, right? But what if we want to study how a car works, but we don't know enough to learn about all these parts? We might get a toy car. So if we get a toy car, then it has much less parts. But does a toy car look like a real car? Yeah, it kind of does. We can learn some things about a toy car, like if we don't put the round parts on down there, that it's hard to move. So we learn about the wheels turn. And so then we can look at a real car and we're like, okay, those wheels probably turn and they work like that. We don't know everything, but it gives us an idea about how things work. Plus, the nice thing is it's very simple, so we can understand it, because this is too complicated, we can't understand. So scientists want to study you. We want to study how humans, we want to protect you from disease. We want to study how you think, how you sense. And so this is what we want to study is y'all, but I don't think that the people would want us to put you in experiments, right?
No!
Another thing is you're way too complicated. You're way too complicated for scientists to study. You have 1 trillion pieces in you. Did you know you're made up of 1 trillion pieces?
Wow.
So this is too much. We can't understand that, you know.
My mom
And
can.
what's that?
My mom can.
Your mom can. Okay. Is your mom a doctor?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, she understands a lot. She understands that. I don't understand.
My dad, you're not a doctor.
What is she?
She's a doctor.
She is.
Doctor?
What kind of doctor?
She's a person doctor.
There you
A
go.
person does, so she does understand people. But there's always more things to learn about. That's why doctors hang out with scientists, because then they can tell them more. So then here's a worm. We saw this picture of a worm already. Think about your 1 trillion pieces. The worm, it's just 1,000 pieces.
Oh my goodness.
Does that seem like a lot less? Yeah, that's a lot less. So we can probably understand 1,000 pieces better than we can understand 1 trillion pieces. So, but the worm has a lot of the same pieces as we do, and so scientists, when they've learned how the worm tastes, and then they found out that's how humans taste, the same way. But they had to learn about it in the worm first, and so that's why I'm doing. I want to see how the worm senses humidity, and then see if it could lead us to seeing how humans sense humidity. So, I mentioned how we like to make the worms glow to do experiments like that. Another reason why we don't study humans is because, you can't make humans glow. Have you ever seen a human glow? No. Scientists have always wanted to make humans glow, but nobody lets us. So we have to study worms. So, now that we've talked about the senses, I want to do an experiment. Can y'all help me with this experiment? I want to see if you can sense if the air is moist, humid, or if it's dry. So I have these 2 mystery boxes over here, and what?
I'm gonna hold them up.
And then we'll line up, and we'll just keep them there. There's mystery box A and mystery box B, and in one of those boxes it's humid air, and in the other one of those boxes is dry air. And so what I need for you to do is get some scissors.
Oh, you need scissors? Okay.
I forgot to bring them.
No, it's not a big deal.
You're going to stick your hand in there, and then you're going to tell me if you think it's humid or dry, and then we're going to write it down. And so we're going to try to get through this part real fast, because we only have 15 minutes left. Oops, I'm sorry.
They have, they go to the next class at 55.
Oh, okay. We have a little more time than that. That's good.
Did you want me to write it down?
Yeah, that would be great.
So it's if they think it's humid or not?
Uh-huh.
You need scissors.
Yep, scissors right. Little scissors. Do you want me to just pop the top?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you just top sign. Anybody else have one? Okay, here you go. You're back up.
Thanks, y'all. That was real interesting. So we'll talk about so what it seems like is that y'all can tell the difference between a dry box and a humid box, because the box where the air was made dry,
Which one was it for me?
no, that's the tall box.
Oh, yay!
And then on that one, we had 11 of you said it was dry.
This is the dry box, guys.
And then it said, and 3 of you said it was humid. So I think more of you said it was dry than it was humid there. So I think that it shows that you can tell when it's dry and when it's humid. You thought it was wet? It was wetting a little one. That's why I didn't want you to touch the bottom.
Ah, that was the sneaky part.
So you already talked about the worms don't want to go out where it's hot. Because you see how hot, so here you see how small they are. Here's a comma from a newspaper or from a book. And you see how small the worm is. If this is how big a comma is, so then the worm it'll shrivel up. It'll dry out really quickly because it's so small. So it needs to stay where it's not too dry. So I just quickly go through the experiment that I made up to test to see if these worms sense humidity is. I put these worms in a little container, and I put them in the middle, kind of like in the middle of a football field. And then here you can see it close up. This is on like a little jello slab, and I put them in the football field, right here. And then I look and see, and then I make one side dry and one side wet, and then I see the worms, it's hard to see in this, I'm sorry, but they've run over to the dry side. Sometimes some go to the wet side. So that seems strange.
What's in the middle?
The worms start in the middle. And then we saw that the worms, they tend to go to this way. So this shows they can tell the difference between this side and that side because they choose to go to one side more than the other. So it shows that they can sense it. So this is also I made a video of their tracks, and you can't see here, but they go straight to the dry side. But when both sides are the same, they just kind of wander randomly. It's kind of showing that they're wandering randomly in a circle. On these, they go straight to the dry side.
You on Max.
So the worms, to do that, they need to use their nerves. Have you all learned about nerves?
Yeah.
You already know about nerves?
Yes.
Great. So.
That's because we were in the art and working class.
Oh, okay. Well, great, because now I don't know. So I was going to say these nerves, they let you sense things. So we just talked about that. Tasting, you have taste nerve.
I already know about
Max.
even though I don't go to the
You already know about that. So I'm sorry, I'm blocking it for all the people on this side. So they let you. All your nerves, you have most of your nerves, they all go to your brain. And then your brain's just full of nerves. That's what your brain is. It's a bunch of nerves. And so, look at that number. It's a big number. You have 100 billion nerves in your brain.
True.
So that's another reason why we want to study the worms. The worms only have 300 nerves. So that's a lot easier. We know what each one does. And we can know when there's 100 billion, it's difficult to tell what anyone does. Just to get an idea of how big this number is, think about it as if every nerve cell was a person, then it would take 15 Earths to have that many people as how many nerve cells. That's why you're so smart. You have so many nerve cells in your brain. So the worm also has nerves. And most of the worm's nerves are pretty boring. This is what, like your nerves, this is an example. And you can see how it branches out. And whenever it branches out, all these ends are sensitive. And they can be, in some nerves, they can be sensitive to movement. That's the touch nerves. So in the worm, most of the worm nerves don't have these branches. They're just straight sticks. But there's these two nerves that are interesting because they're different. And they have these branches. And they go all over the worms outside of their body, of their skin. Now, you have the same kinds of nerves. You have the nerves, they go on your skin and they branch out. That's why you can touch anywhere on your skin and you can feel it because the nerves, they branch so that everywhere on your skin there's a nerve there to send a signal to your brain. So what I found is that these special branched nerves are in the worm are the ones that sense humidity. And what's interesting is we found out what parts in the worm brain in these nerves sense humidity, and they found that humans have the same genes. So it's the same way. So just like in your finger, so here's the worm, and it has that sense humidity. Your finger also has those same ones. And so we think that the worm, when it starts drying out, it shrinks, right? Could you think about it? Because the worm, somebody said the worm is 80% water. So what happens when it starts losing water? Does it get bigger or smaller? Smaller, right? So I wanted to kind of give you an example here.
Oh, guys, Michael, picture.
Oh, so you can do the balloon and it's outside hot, so it gets bottle. I get it. I know it is.
Here we go.
It's gonna
Look,
get
guys,
bottle.
it's like a worm out of a balloon.
So here, well, I thought this kind of looked like a worm.
Ooh. And those are all the nerves. That's so cool.
So here's like a worm. So here's its mouth. It has a tongue sticking out. It's not all worms have tongues.
They have tongues?
No, they don't.
Oh, okay.
No. But here's its mouth, and then here's the branches. Now, so you think about it. So the worm might get a little dry, and then it starts losing some water. Did this just shrink?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the nerves they notice that it's shrinking.
Are you gonna
And then
let
so
it go?
so they were telling the worm it's getting too dry.
Are you gonna let it go?
And then
Are you gonna let it go?
all right. So that's how it makes sense to movement. So how about, do you all want a balloon?